And welcome to Believe in Chargers with the great Lorenzo Neal. Matt Money Smith here. A big thank you to our friends at FanDuel who help us put this whole thing together. And I'm looking at the odds low, and, well, the Chargers are still at plus 1,600 after the big trade earlier this week. A couple days ago when we're doing this on a Wednesday, the Rams, I would describe it as prohibitive favorite to win the Super Bowl, plus 550. For the Rams. Next in line, Bills, Ravens, Seahawks, all at plus 1,100. Double the odds of what the Rams are after they have the MVP and the defensive MVP going into the season. Certainly a stacked roster and one that we're going to see in Week 7. I'm pretty darn excited about that matchup.
Yeah, how could you not be? And, it's great because we don't have Pro Bowl tackles. We have all pro tackles. So I think that you're going to talk about those are going to be some great battles because he could play either side, Myles. And I'm looking forward to that game. But it's just so interesting what the Rams are willing to do and how much draft capital they're willing to give up. And it's like they don't necessarily believe the draft. Yeah, they'll get some players, but they understand when you can get a high-end, high-motor guy that's a game changer. Look what they did to get Stafford MVP and to have two guys, offense and defensive MVPs. I think their odds go up tremendously. But, hey, we're not sleeping on these Chargers because I'm telling you, this is a stacked roster. It's just about staying healthy. The biggest thing for this LA Chargers team, in my opinion, to keep them out of the AFC Championship game this year is health. I'm telling you, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think I was, on the field yesterday for OTAs and was chatting with a couple people, and we're just kind of kicking around how would you feel about the Chargers trading Thule, a 1, a 2, and a 3? Like, would you feel good about that for Myles Garrett? And it's a lot. It's a lot to give up. Myles Garrett, we just saw him 2 years ago, and, Joe Alt had what I felt like was an all-pro, rookie season. That was really the only game he had an issue. Rashawn Slater is a perennial all-pro, and Myles Garrett got him a couple times, and he's just a different dude. And I think that's probably one where you would have to sit and think pretty hard about that because Thule's going to be in line for a big extension. We talked about that last week. We don't have to relitigate that. He's going to be asking for a lot, and it'll be interesting to see if he wants to bet on himself or take maybe a little bit of a lower number this year. If he puts together back-to-back 13.5 seasons, he's going to be above that $40 million per year. If he doesn't, if he wants to get that deal done right now, it's going to probably be in the 30s. And we talked about that. So Myles Garrett's making about $30 million a year. He's actually, his average is in the 40s, but that came with that big signing bonus, and a lot of that's already been paid for by the Browns. So, you might be in the same sort of area when it comes to these guys and how they get paid and how the number just keeps going up and up and up. And that's why for the Rams, even though they gave up a heck of a player, man, defensive rookie of the year, 2-time first ballot Pro Bowler, and a 1, a 2, and a 3. I think the best way I heard it described, and I think this would go for 2. I think if you put Thule on the market right now, you would probably get a 1, and you could even maybe get a 1 and a 2. You're definitely getting a 1 and a 3. So look at it that way. You'd be trading 2 1s and 2 2s and a 3, or 2 1s, a 2, and a 3 to get Myles Garrett. That's the kind of draft capital you're talking about. And I think when you feel like you're a team that's about to win the Super Bowl or knocking on the door, then you do a deal like that. And I'm with you, Lo. I think the Chargers are right there as well. And I could have seen them putting together something like this if they didn't love having Thule around so much and he wasn't so important for the chemistry of this team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And Myles, let's be honest. I mean, Thule's he's a great upcoming young player. Myles is built different. He's bigger. He's strong. The guy is just a freak. I mean, he puts his hands on guys. He can move them. It's nothing he can't do when he wants to turn it on. So I think that, yeah, of course, the salary, like you said, because it's just what the cap is, but they're two different players, and no disrespect to Thule because I think he's a great young player. Yeah, if you're the Chargers, you just got to look and say, look, we're going to hold court. You got to realize, where's Myles Garrett in his career? He's 29, 30 years old.
Yeah,
it's
30.
about winning the Super Bowl. It's like, okay, where am I going? You look at Cleveland, they're a young team. You don't know, just got a new coach. So they're like, look, we're going to build. You don't know who's going to be their quarterback for sure. You think about it. So Myles is like, look, get me out of here. Let me go to a team. Why know who they are? Everybody in the NFL knows who the Rams are. You know their identity. You know they're going to score points. You know that they like to get after you on defense. So now you went and added Myles Garrett. He understands it. This guy's going to have a good year because he knows he's playing for a championship type of team. Well, he's playing for a championship team. And guess what? So is Thule. Thule's not just playing for a contract. He's playing with the AFC. I believe this is the top two, if not the best team in the AFC. I know paper it's going to say Buffalo. Josh Allen has to do too much. We don't know about that defense. You look at the Ravens. Yeah, they got a new coach mentor, a great coach. We know what he brings to defense, but now you're asking him to change roles. You're a head coach. You're managing guys. You're managing offense, defense. There's a lot going to be on his plate. And then I think it's the Chargers. Denver, lucky last year. I don't think Denver's that good. I think it's a three-man race. Houston, I think just inconsistent. You got the quarterback play. They got a great defense. Don't love their offense. So I really believe this Chargers team is built to be in the thick of things this year at the end.
Yeah, it helps. You're leading me back to what the pressers were yesterday and kind of what the theme was, right? And I open with Myles because obviously it's the biggest story in football.
Oh, sure.
He's arguably the greatest pass rusher. He's going to be in that conversation when it's all said and done. You can make a case that he's right there with Reggie White, every bit as a menace, if not even more so. Guy just broke the single season sack record last year. But the theme of yesterday with Justin Herbert at the podium for the lectern for 20 plus minutes was quick game, was anticipation, was footwork, and he even said it. I mean, it's not a direct quote because I didn't write it down, but it essentially was, I got to play faster. I got to get the ball out. I got to throw with anticipation before the receivers are even looking. That's going to provide us yak opportunities. And then he said, and it doesn't matter how good your edge rushers are, can't get to us. If the ball's out quick, nothing you can do about it. And I remember it from 2018 from the jump. That ball was out, man. They had just come off a huge victory over the Ravens on the road in the wild card round, went to New England for the divisional round, coin toss. Bill Belichick's like, we'll take the ball. And I just went, uh-oh. And Bosa and Melvin Ingram were just apoplectic because they could not get to Tom Brady because the ball was out. It was just good. It didn't matter how good those edges were and how they won their one-on-ones. The ball was gone by the time they got to the quarterback. And that is something that Mike McDaniel doesn't just major in. He's got a PhD in it. I mean, his quick game is as good, and it's probably the best in football. When you look at the yak and the time to throw and air yards versus yards gained for Tua and for Jalen Waddle and for Tyreek Hill, it's on a different level. And so when you're playing the Rams and you're looking at Young and Turner and obviously now Myles Garrett, if the ball's out, there's nothing they can do. And if you're running it at them, and if that running game is right, and we'll get into that with what Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater were talking about, because it was three great pressers yesterday with those two guys, your bookend tackles and Justin Herbert. We had about an hour of pressers that were pretty darn special. Not to mention Max McCaffrey, the running backs coach, and just his gushing over Amari and Hampton and what he thinks he can be. Obviously Max, brother of Christian, him well, Lo, from being up in San Francisco, and that's the sort of vision he has. Yeah, that Omarion can be a Christian McCaffrey in this offense. That is not a crazy statement to make with his size, speed, athleticism combination. So just kind of counter that week 7. And look, when I'm looking at it, like I said, FanDuel right now, plus 550 Rams to win the Super Bowl. The Chargers to win the AFC plus 750. So that is basically right up there with the Ravens, the Bills, and tied with the Seahawks, just ahead of the Chiefs. And I think just to quickly before I'm going to pass it back to you, Lo, and just quick game. And when you played in offenses like that and how frustrating it must have been for the defenses.
Without a doubt, it's frustrating, Money. And that's what you're just talking about. And you hear Justin say, I got to trust. And it's about trust. It's about 3 steps. I got to let the ball go. That's what Tom Brady, that's what he majored in. That's what Tom Brady that's why he's the GOAT, because he said, you know what? I know 1, 2, 3, the ball's out of my hands. Nothing the defenders can do. And what starts to happen? The corners say, we got to come up. We got to play tighter defense. We got to come up because we know it's going real quick. They're getting the ball in his hand. And now you have missed tackles because they're trying to tackle them at the sticks. They're saying, we can't give up big yards. So now they're gambling. They're trying to jump. They intercept balls, knock down balls. They're playing press, more press, and the ball's being out of their hands. And that's how you turn in those yak yards, those bigger plays. It's really going to put a lot of pressure on those defense. And oh, by the way, like you alluded to, Amari Hampton, here's a guy who didn't get hurt in college. We saw the guy when he's leaving. You see how big he is, and he's still fast. He's got breakaway speed, catch the ball out of the backfield. He runs hard. He's downhill type of runner, and he's got some wiggle. So when I can see why McCaffrey's gushing over this guy, this offense can be prolific. This offense can be dangerous. And oh, yeah, but then you got to go 7-step drop because now we're out your defenders in the pass rush. They think it's 3-step drop. They're 1, 2, 3. They're trying to get their hands up and knock passes down. Now it's 1, 2, 3. They got their hands up. And guess what? He takes 4 more steps back and it's 7-step. Now you got those double moves. You got gas and you got so many other weapons, Q, downfield. So this offense with McDaniels at the helm as offensive coordinator, and if the buy-in's early and they master this short game like you're cooking, the quick game, and Justin says, I'm just going to let it loose and turn it loose, turn to a spot, and trust my receivers, this offense could be deadly.
Yeah, that's you kind of set it up perfectly, Lo, because that's, just to kind of get to Herbert at the, in his presser, that's sort of what he pointed out, because we asked him, like, because he talked about it before we even asked him about footwork. He didn't throw the ball yesterday. He had kind of this like green sort of ball with 2 handles in it. And so he would do his footwork and then he would fake throw this ball and kind of shared with us what it was. It's a water ball. And he's like, it allows you to kind of get the right feel of throwing the ball without having to throw it. They want to do that once a week, he said, just so he's not throwing the ball and thinking about throwing the ball and where he's placing it, but it's all about mentally being in tune with his footwork. And that's the idea. It wasn't like I need to rest my arm. It was more a sole focus on the footwork. Not thinking about anything else. And so, and he mentioned it's quite a bit different, some of the stuff that he's asking him to do. The way he described it, you would understand it. It was, like speaking Polish to me, as he mentioned, my feet were parallel and it was right, then left, then right. And now it's different and what he's asking. And, but sort of the stuff that did make sense was he said, yeah, he's just sort of getting me used to throwing the ball. He talked about his arm strength and how he could wait and just put the ball right where he wanted it. But at that point, defenders are already closing in, and now there's less yak opportunity because the defender is close. It's not about me delivering the ball in the right spot at the right time. It's the fact that when I've now let it go, that defender on my receiver is closer, and there's less yak opportunities. Like now, he said it stuck with him, the thing that McDaniel said, and he pointed out what a great teacher he is and how he helps you visualize these things, and they're easier to absorb. He basically told the receivers, like, if you're not ready, ball's going to hit you in the face with this guy because of how fast it's coming out. So he's still throwing it with anticipation, but he's still Justin Herbert. He's still the guy that's throwing that ball, and it's going to be on you before you're looking. So make sure when you expect that ball to be there in that spot that your head is coming around. And Herbert then said, everybody's, been right up with it, man. Everyone's on pace to get this thing mastered, that he has not hit anybody in the head with it yet. And he said, I can see it. I can see it, and I can visualize what he's talking about, how we're going to have these yak opportunities.
Yeah, and you will. You're going to have plenty of them. And I love what Herbert's talking about. Man, just getting my feet parallel, making sure I'm ready to throw the ball because you're getting back so quick. And sometimes the mechanics, they go out the door because you're getting back so quick. And, okay, the receiver's going to break. Okay, I got to let the ball go. So now I'm throwing through my arm, have to go across my body. I'm throwing, my feet's not set, so I got a bad angle. Now the ball's coming out weird. Interceptions, throwing behind guys, throwing in front of guys because the feet are not set and not aligned with the hips. And that's what he's talking about. That, so, they got the green. So it's about, okay, it's about not about the throwing. It's about, hey, getting back. Now get your feet set. So when you let the ball go ahead of time with anticipation, it's all footwork. Keep your feet quiet when you're down, moving around in that pocket. So I think it's great that McDaniels is here to get guys kind of, locked in. And this is what you're winning games now. It's about, okay, everyone's getting on pace, getting this quick game together, getting the quarterback to believe, getting the receivers now. Hey, getting your head on. Hey, you got to beat your guy. After you beat him, the ball's on you. And this guy's going to be hanging on. So you got to get your head around because those balls, get tipped up, knocked up, interception. So you're going to have guys with better hand strength. You have guys, seeing the ball a lot better. I think this is great, this quick game for this Chargers team, because you still have an explosive guys down. Think about Gaston. Think about your other tight ends. Think about your receiver. You still have a vertical game because of the speed that this receiver core has. So I think it's pick your poison.
Yeah. And I think, explosives. I mean, look, yeah, you can think about Air Coryell and you can think about the run and shoot and, and obviously Mike Leach and that spread and stuff. And yeah, there are offenses that just, chuck and duck, man. But that's not the NFL. Like typically you are setting a team up, right? It's just jab, jab, jab. And then when it's time to throw that haymaker, it's, you think about that play in the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's like it was set up, man. It was all jabs. And now I've got you set up, and here it comes, and he missed the throw, and it cost him the Super Bowl. Herbert doesn't miss those throws. Like when it's time and you find and you have the opportunity to exploit what you've set the defense up to do, McDaniel is so good at that. And we've seen so many of those mic'd up moments. Hell, one of them happened against the Chargers with Ichan and that 53-yard run. He saw it. If you watch the mic'd up, he's like, here it is, guys. This is it. This thing's going. And sure enough, saw it, bang, see you later. 50. And when you have a quarterback that has the talent of Herbert, it's not, why, they're taking his greatest weapon away. Nobody else in the league. There's like 3 guys that have what he has. Why would you not want to lean into that? And it's like, oh no, he's leaning into it. It's just the special sauce. And, and look, does a Big Mac a Big Mac without the special sauce if it's just ketchup and mustard? No, the special sauce makes it, but it's just a tiny bit of the Big Mac, but it's what makes it. And I think that's the thing about Herbert is, that's ultimately what's going to make this offense is when it's not death by 1,000 cuts. It's death by 998 cuts and 2 freaking nuclear bombs that get dropped on your head, for 50 and 60 yards. And that's, and it was encouraging to hear Justin talk about that relationship with McDaniel. There, definitely go back and watch it. Everybody that's listening or watching us right now, if you can, hit up Chargers.com and take it in, because I think you felt it. You felt sort of this positive. I'm a weirdo this way. You can sort of feel aura and you can feel energy and you can feel disposition and body language. And when someone kind of lifts up a little bit, when they're excited. And he was asked about maybe like the moment that he felt like McDaniel might be, if he saw his football intelligence, he just kind of got this little glimmer in his eye. And he was like, oh yeah. He goes, I remember it exactly. He said, we were sitting down and he must have played me 200 snaps, this cut up that he made of this guy cut up like hundreds of snaps of mine and of his teams. And they were very similar plays. And he was showing me, and I think this also speaks to the that Mike McDaniel's comfortable, and Herbert said this, he appreciates his honesty and the way he wants to coach him up and saying, hey, Justin, all right, this is how you did it. This is how my guy did it. Look at how much more successful our play is because of the anticipation, because of the yak opportunity, because of the footwork, and he said that was the moment that he's like, okay, this guy's put in some serious time and some serious research to do this. And he said, I appreciated that. And he said, from that moment, I was like, all right, let's go. He's like, it really made me want to get back to football when he showed me that. And I could visualize it because it's just, here's what you did. You thought it was successful. Here's what we did. Look at how much more successful. And so I think it's 2 incredibly intelligent individuals that are also very successful already that have now met, and it sounds like they're really comfortable with each other.
That's just pretty profound statement, Money, that you're just talking about. You said, hey, Justin Herbert sits down with Daniels and he's got 100 plays, 50 of his and 50 of the other guy, Thule, or the system that he's in. And it's like, oh my God, look how much more success when you have a quarterback that's a foot taller, big arm, faster, more elusive, way more durable, probably a higher football IQ in some, just what he's done. But look at the success they had. As Herbert, when you're sitting back looking at you, like, oh my God, how much better? What can we do? How much more effective can we do? Because maybe I'm a little taller. I can see over the line. There's other things that I have compared to they don't have, just natural God-given gifted ability. So when you look at that as a possible MVP of the league, Herbert, offensive MVP, guy that people think is so highly thought after, it's got to be not just humbling, but it's got to be exciting. It's got to be like, oh my God, if I do these things and I buy in, and that's what McDaniel was doing. He's like, look, it's hard sometimes when a coach just comes and say, do this, do this, do this. I say, and without any, and even though they've had success, you're like, okay, but then when they show you your footwork, show you it's in a different place, let you see those things, it is very eye-opening.
Yeah, I think, and and he mentioned that the cut-ups were from not just Miami. He's like, it was the Texans, when he was just getting into the league. It was, when Kubiak was the head coach, and he said it was the Redskins. It was, it was at that time when they were in Washington together, that it was all of these examples of, this isn't just one guy and because he's got Jalen Waddle and Tyree. He's like, no, it was all of those plays with a variety of different players, all executing at a very high level, and it helped illustrate that. And then, and he also said, because he was asked about getting hit as much as he got hit last year, and you know how Justin is, man. He never puts it on anybody else. He's like, look, a lot of that's on me. I got to get rid of the ball quicker. He goes, and that's where a lot of this is coming from. He goes, if I can get rid of, and that's where he brought up, if I get rid of the ball quick, they can't get home. He also pointed out that Q, much like Mike McDaniel said about Q, he was asked about Q and, the fifth-year option, and he said, yeah, look, Q's already got it, man. He's already way up to speed in this offense, and he basically said he's going to have a big year. This guy's ready to roll, man, in this offense, that it's a really good fit for him. And he said that about everybody. He said it, David Njoku, to have him now, there, and, went through, he really just said all the receivers. He said, look, between Q and Ladd and just rattled them all off. He's like, these guys are set up, man. They're set up. And I think that also is putting that pressure on him, that basically Mike McDaniel's written the check and Herbert's the one that's got to cover it. He's the one that's got to make sure the money's in the bank so it doesn't bounce.
Exactly.
Because when you got a guy that's talking about how special Herbert can be and then says that Q reminds him of Julio and Andre Johnson, and that Ladd is built for this offense, it's set up for Herbert to deliver. And like I said, it started out a little odd. It was just like, I don't know. It's just weird energy from Justin at the start. He was just kind of standing there waiting for somebody. And I always, I never want to jump in and ask the first question. I respect the beat writers. They're the guys that are on the beat, and I want them to kind of get their stuff done. I have access to these guys that they don't. So I always try to just kind of wait. And like, everyone was sort of intimidated. Nobody wanted to ask him the first question. And then thankfully Popper and Chris Rim just kind of started letting it fly. And it's very short answers at first, about why wasn't he throwing today? Is the arm okay? And it's just, that kind of stuff. And then he started loosening up and he started talking about the footwork. And that's why I'm not throwing, because I got to get this footwork right because of timing. And then as he started explaining, what they're trying to do with this offense, you could see him start to get a little bit more and more excited about talking through what they're doing and how he sees it. And it turned in. Then he talked about Tyler Biadasz and said, it took me, I think he said it was the first snaps. He's like, we got together a while ago before phase one. He's like, we got out there, and he said, first time snapping the ball, I was like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be fine, man. And he talked about just how smart he is, how well he sees it, how well he communicates, how that takes some stuff. And I think it reminded me of how he talked about Corey Linsley when he said, it takes a lot off my plate when I have someone like Tyler that I know when we get to the line of scrimmage, he's got it all squared away. And that means we can be faster. I can be faster. I have more stuff taken out. And he basically said, he's a pro's pro, and we're going to be real good there.
That's great. I was just listening to some of the things you were saying. You're talking about just, starting off slow and just the masteration of the communication. I was with your boy Monday, and he told me, hey, I told him you're his guy. Q, he was at the Andre Reed's, charity for boys and girls. So we hung out, had a big boy pop together and just talked a little bit, chopped it up. And he's just like really excited. He's like, man, I appreciate your money. Listen to the show. He said, so Q, he's just a great young man. And I just said, hey, continue, man, continue. I said, don't be content. Of course he's not. And just like, hey, look, the sky's the limit. You can be a big time receiver, one of the best. You just got to keep pushing. I said, you have all the athletic ability to do it. And you just listen to Justin, And, McDaniel's talk about raving about these receivers and about this offense, what it can bring to the table, and, and how prolific it can be, and just the buy-in. And it's like, you talk about a golf swing, money. It's like, how many times you got to go out there and hit the ball? Look at Justin. Here's a guy who's already been a Pro Bowler, he's one of the elite quarterbacks, and he's talking about he's got to get his footwork right. He's talking about, hey, I can't have the ball necessarily in my hand because I'm thinking about wanting to throw the ball. They don't want me thinking about throwing the ball. They want me to get to that spot, have my feet set. Well, okay, boom, get to the spot, boom. How's my hip set? How do I look? Am I ready to deliver the ball? Think about how basic and how they're breaking this down to the basic fundamentals of how to throw. This is the stuff that you learn as, growing up, but it's those attention to details. And that's why McDaniel's had to show him, look, I can do this in pretty much with any quarterback because the system works. Now give me greatness and put greatness in the system. What does that do?
Yeah, it amplifies it, right? It's a force multiplier. You mentioned golf swing low, so I had to go pull it up. The PM Lounge presents the Fullback Classic. Get yourself signed up now. June 26th and 27th, Dragonfly Golf Course, PM Lounge, Pro-Am foursomes, hosted by our guy Lowe. You mentioned Eddie George going to be there, Jeff Garcia going to be there. I think you said, is Jim Everett coming out?
Yeah, Jimmy's coming too. Jimmy's coming. Yes.
So we got a lot of fancy folks. I'll be out there. I ended up greasing up the swing a little bit on Saturday. Went out to the range just to make sure my back wouldn't break when I swung the big stick a couple times. So I'm very excited. But be sure. Let's see, the PM Lounge Fresno. .com, I think will have the link. So the pmlounge.com, the PM Lounge Fresno.com will have the link. Again, 26th, 27th, Friday and a Saturday. Come on out. Friday night we'll party. Saturday we'll golf. Have a good time. I'm really looking forward to it.
Money's you're gonna be leading the show, Money. There it is.
There it is.
Little flyers. Check out those flyers.
There it is right there. Hold that thing real tight, people. Hold that QR code. Lift it up a little bit there, low.
There we go.
There you go. Get that in there. Snap that QR code, folks.
There you go.
Come on out and see us. We're gonna have a good time.
How is Harbs in the OC? It just the Harbaugh learn thing. How do you view? Of course, the relationship's great.
Yeah.
But what kind of get the listeners and let me kind of put me in that place where, what do you think goes on between those two guys, and what's the relationship, and what is he looking for in your opinion?
Yeah, I think with Mike, even though they might seem like they're super different, they're very much the same in one thing. And it's what Jim Harbaugh always says when you ask him about, a player and how you guys getting along and what's his answer. He's like, well, he loves football and I love football. And I love people that love football. And I think that's what he recognizes with Mike McDaniel, is that here's a guy who commits hours upon hours to studying, what some people might find to be tedious work. But those are the margins on which he operates and exploits an opponent. And I think he has so much respect for him on that front. Then I think that's normal for any of us, right? If you and God knows Lowe put in more work than anyone on his team based on what you got back out of it. There's not a stat for you blocking and blowing these holes open for guys to pile up the yards and cash their big checks, but you busted your ass and you went out there and you executed. And so I think you appreciated the guys that got all those accolades,
right?
For busting their ass and at least putting in the work. And I think that's sort of what the relationship is for Coach and Coach Harbaugh and Coach McDaniel is there's this respect he has because of the work he puts in. And I know that certainly holds for me. I work with people that work really hard, and I work with people that don't work really hard. And it's the way I think it's very common regardless of what line of work you're in. And I think that's one of the things about Q, and for all the people that were coming at us about Q and stats versus effort, it was just something that I always saw and I had always heard from the coaches that this guy works his tail off, man, and he puts in the time and he is committed to getting better, and he's on the jugs machine every day trying to get his hands better and working on his concentration and his routes. I think that's one of the reasons why, you think about some of those first-round receivers that have flamed out in a hurry, whether it's injury or production. And I think maybe they didn't. I don't know for a fact, but maybe that wasn't there. And I think the reason the Chargers stood behind Q like they did is because the kid put in the work. And it's like, all right, man, you know what? If he's willing to put in, and I think Herbert was the one that led that charge and kept throwing him the ball, even though there were some drops and some tips that led to interceptions and some critical plays that led to losses in that rookie year. I think there was still that understanding that this guy's trying, man. He is trying as hard as he possibly can, and he's going to get it. So let's just make sure we back him up. And I think that's a Harbaugh McDaniel thing.
And because you got, I know people, you got Harbaugh, who's pretty much an offensive guy, quarterback. I wonder, you just wondering, is he watching? What's his, of course, he's letting his OC, that's why he brought him in. That's why McDaniels came, because he knew Harbaugh was going to give him the keys to the truck and say, look, let's make this thing better. So I just want, kind of those ins and outs, those nuances. Is he in those meetings? Like, look, I want to learn more as a, you know what I mean? As a coach, iron sharpens iron. Is he watching with Justin's footwork, understanding those little concepts? And if so, it's like, those, we all have our niches, and we all have, what we like, we don't like. And it's like, so for a coach sometimes to bring in a guy and like, wow, to show what I could be doing better. You know what I mean? As hard as looking at that, it's like, man, I'm a quarterback. I should know this. Or not know it because he knows it. Maybe I should have been doing this, or maybe I should have been teaching this. So that's what I'm about, these two great offensive minds. I wonder, just how those guys click.
No, I think it's everybody that's been asked about Mike McDaniel loves him, talks about just what, how much fun he is. Fun is a word you hear a lot.
Yeah.
Heard that from both Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater yesterday. It's fun to have him around. And then I think in terms of Herbert, it's more of that professional, and I think a lot of that is maybe Herbert. It's interesting, because of all the the Herbert presser was great, and he was very forthcoming and opened up, I thought, quite a bit and got long-winded with some of those answers and got a little technical. And but between him, Alt, and we'll get to Alt and Slater now, but man, I thought Slater's presser was the best. Like, it's the one that got me. Yeah, it's the one that really got me fired up, because you could just kind of. I love Rashawn, man. He's a very thoughtful, very intelligent, and also just an exceptional player on top of all of that, right? And just has very high standards of what he expects from himself. I think, when he was coming out and he's getting dinged for arm length, I think that really kind of set the course for his career of, I'll show you. Okay. You could ding me. I'm the best O-lineman in college football. Everybody knows it, but you're telling me my arms aren't long enough. So I think that kind of set the course for his career. And I think he's always going to have that chip. But, I talked about obviously the injury and having to go through that all last year, and how it was hard at first. And then all of a sudden just kind of looked at it as, okay, well, this is my season. Can I go undefeated in rehab season and make sure I attack this and do everything and then some? So I'm ahead and I'm ready to go, and talked about how he feels great. But the one thing, and I thought about you, Lo, when he said it, and it was just the way he said it, right? Like, we can all, like, you opened up with it, Lo, about how, hey, I think this team can win the AFC. I think this team, when I look at the flaws of the other teams, that, everybody's flawed. There's no powerhouse in the AFC. So why not, the Chargers, if you measure them up against the others? And I'm with you. I think every team is flawed. You can make cases of why it's not going to work for them, just like people are making cases for why it won't work for the Chargers. They haven't won a playoff game yet, with Justin Herbert. They've got the offensive line that's been an issue pretty much his entire career, on and on and on. And I think that also hits Rashawn as well. But he just said, man, it's time for us to do something, man. We got way too much talent on this team. And he's like, it's time. This is the year that the time is right now. Like, this is the year where we have got to do something, because it's way too many. There are way too many guys that are way too talented for us not to be in that mix. And he's like, and this is the year that I intend to make it happen. And I just kind of thought about you in 2007, right? And when you were first with the Chargers, I think your first year was kind of a rough year, right? And then take a step, and bitch of a season, right, in the playoffs with the loss to the Jets. And then like you tell me, Lo, what was it like coming into training camp that next year when you guys made the run to the AFC Championship? Because that's kind of what I thought of. I was like, it feels like this is one of those where they're like, what are we doing? Like, look around this locker room, man. There is no excuse for us not to be in the mix moving forward.
It's not, and it's great that your leader said that. When you hear Slater say stuff like that, when you were telling me that, I was like, man, my mind's just thinking. Well, he's like, it's time for us to make a push. He's like, look, we've been right there. People talk about, hey, how good we are, and we get in the playoffs, we fizzle out. It's the first round, injury bug, all those different things surround you. You're like, dude, this team, Kansas City, in the early, for the last 7-8 years, have been the team. I'm telling you, the window is open for the Chargers. Buffalo had some time. You look at the Ravens; they've had even a little window.
Yeah,
and they've had it. So this is the Chargers' window to step into it and say, okay, for the next 4 or 5 years, this team is going to be the one that's going to be leading the AFC. Why not? And you have the horses, you have the weapons, you have the coaching staff, you have the talent on both sides of the ball. It's not that you just got bunch of slaps on the defense. You got a couple Hall of Famers. When it's all said and done, you got to catch HOS on defense. You play good defense. You can stop the run. You played a lot better, and you have the offense. This team, like Slater said, it's time for them to do something. Yeah. And if you don't make it to the AFC Championship, barring injuries, I'm not. So if you get the injury bug, you take the. I'm telling you, Money, I really believe 100% that this team will be in the AFC Championship. I'm not saying winning it, but I think with the talent and the depth you have running back, what you have receivers, and if this team goes and plays, brother, I think they're going to be right there. I think they're going to be right there.
And I think, like I said, every team has issues. Every team has issues. The Bills traded quite a bit of draft capital for DJ Moore. That's a high price to pay considering his salary. They gave him extension. They gave up a 2 for a guy that has regressed in each of his last few years. But they really need a receiver. They have not been able to find those receivers. They have a heck of a running back. They just lost. They lost Edwards. I think they kept McGovern, but they lost Edwards. So they lost a big part of their offensive line. They have a head coach that was their OC that's never been a head coach before. Felt like Sean McDermott was holding that defense together, quite a bit. So there's their issues. The Ravens, obviously, first-time head coach. They got an OC, first-time OC, who's never called plays before. You've got Lamar Jackson, who has, he's an exceptional player. He's regressed. He's not running like he used to. Is Derrick Henry finally kind of hitting that wall? They obviously needed to fix their O-line. I felt like they did that by drafting Ioane. But, they also lost an all-pro center that they've got to figure out how to replace. So they've got issues, right, without Linderbaum. And then you have a defense that was pretty terrible for the first half of the year. Now terrible. I do think Jesse Minter will fix that. I have full faith that he's going to do that. So that's going to be back. But again, I'm just saying, so there's their issue. The Patriots. You saw what happened to them in the playoffs. Chargers absolutely knocked Drake May's head off. If they had just a slightly below average offense, they would have won that game. They could not do anything offensively, but defensively, they got after them. The Broncos got after them, and obviously the Seahawks destroyed them. There were serious issues with the pressure that team faced on offense, and it just wasn't a high caliber offense. Can they make that jump with adding A.J. Brown in another year, and can they do that? We'll see.
Their tackle doesn't have it. They drafted a tackle. He does not have it. You're good. If you're asking that dude, if you don't play 12 and protect him on that side or slide, you're in trouble. They are not going to do it. They won't repeat.
Yeah. And look, and I think for the Chargers, I understand the people, but what I'm saying is everybody has something, right? The Chargers, hey, you've got to protect Herbert. He was the most hit quarterback last year. All right. The team has gotten blown out in both of their playoff games the last 2 years. 4 interceptions against the Texans. 2 of them were not his fault, though that was 100% on the receiving parties as to why those things were picked off. But you also had a defense that played lights out, and the offense couldn't do anything. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't block. They couldn't, and against the the Patriots, they couldn't do a lick. If you had an offense that, again, was just average, you create that turnover early, and now you jump up 7-0 instead of going, turnover on downs with a goal-to-go situation, that thing could be completely different. So it's like, I get it, man. I get people taking shots at the Chargers and saying, I don't believe, but I think what I'm pushing back on is, okay, well, I can make that case for all these other teams as well. Let's see if Patrick Mahomes is really healthy. Let's see what they look like after having lost their starting 2 corners and not really having any standout defensive player besides Chris Jones. Like, are they really, going to be like, what are they doing at receiver? They have not had an elite receiver since Tyreek Hill left. So I think there's questions for everyone. And I think that could help put a bounce in the step of guys like Slater and Alt and Herbert, 3 captains of this team that are like, dude, no more excuses, man. It's crazy that we're not in the mix, that people don't think we're going to be in the mix.
Right. What was some things Alt said? And we talking to Slater.
Yeah.
Because I love what Slater saw. Look, what are we doing? It's time for us to make a move. What about
Alt was funny, man. Alt talked about how, because, he comes from Notre Dame, pro style, West Coast offense, and he's like, I ain't never been anything like this, man. He's like, that was the other thing that Rashawn said real quick, Lo, that you would love. He said when he was asked about, blocking in this offense, and he also said, yeah, I haven't been anything like this before. He goes, here's the way I describe this offense. Ball snapped, I start running and destroy everything in my path. He's like, if you don't like doing that, you're probably not an O-lineman. So that was the way he described it.
He said, I just start running and destroy everything. Start running.
He's like, they tell me to start running and just kill everything in my way. He's like, I love it. Alt talked about, we ended up having him on the radio show, so I got him some one-on-one time. And I was like, dude, it was like I talked about with you, Lo. I was like, you guys are running your tails off, man. Like, nobody is working harder in OTAs. And he started laughing. He's like, right? He's like, man. He goes, I was gassed that first day. He's like, but yeah, he's like, we're running. And he's like, I will be in the best shape of my life. He's like, wow. It's way different. He said the one thing that stuck out to him, that's really jumped out to him, is that, like, you can never assume the play's over. Like, you don't know where that back is and where that crease is. And so you just need to go. You need to go, and you need to keep holding that block, because you can't see what's behind you, and you don't know if he's already cut in or if he's coming your way, and he's still looking for that lane. And he's like, a lot of times when you hear Butch Berry screaming he's basically screaming for us to keep going. Like, you have to keep going until you see that back running by you, because you have no idea. And I know you've been in the offense before, Lo, so you can speak to it, because he was saying, like, that's the one thing that's different. He's like, before it's like, okay, 2 steps, set my block, here he comes, plays over. Right. And he said, now it's like, no, dude, you're freaking running that guy to the sideline and carrying his butt out of bounds.
Yeah, it's stick and stay. And, that's when you play this type of offensive boom, you stick, you stay, and you keep running your feet, because now you're making him cover every blade of grass. And he's got to move with you, because he's thinking he sees that running back. So he's got to widen. The defenders have to widen. So, okay, I got to widen with the running back. And all of a sudden, now that running back creases in that hole. And now you have those big plays, because this type of offense, and that's why the San Fran has been so successful, and you have to cover every blade of grass. And McDaniel, this is the mastermind of it. So these guys, like you said, they're going to be in shape and they're running. That's crazy. He said, I'll be in the best shape of my life. That comes from a 6'6", 300 some pound tackle. Said, we're going to be in the best shape of our life. So that means you are running.
Yeah, they're running, man. They're running the heck out of those guys. But that's the offense. And like I said, what's the ways? And I will say this too. Both he and Slater said the same thing, because they were asked about having Cole Strange on the line, coming from Miami. And I know that people wanted, they were not happy with free agency, that they wanted Ciamalo or they wanted Jenkins. And I understand that. They're both very good players. But both Alton Strange and Herbert, for that matter, was asked about having, or both Alton Slater and Herbert were all asked about having Cole Strange, starting at right guard, and they all three, they could have just said, yeah, it's been great. It's great to have someone that knows the offense. That's not what the answer was. The answer was, oh man, Cole's been awesome. Like, Cole is really helped, like, especially Joe Alt, because he's right next to him. He's like, he's really helping me out. And it's been a huge benefit for me to have him here kind of walk me through this because I've never done it before. And so for people that maybe weren't all that excited by the signing, just know the guy that's got to play next to him and the guy that's got to take the ball, take the snap and is expecting him to protect him are both very excited to have Cole Strange on this team. Whether it's Herbert, Joe Alt, and obviously that left guard situation is still getting figured out. It was Awashika again who was getting the run with the ones. Coyote was before Slaughter worked in there and before Trevor Penning was going in with the threes. So right now it looks like they really like what they're seeing from Awashika before the pads go on. So I would say he's probably left guard 1 right now. Yeah,
I think every team loves a position that you're going to have the competition. And, that guard, Zion's, last 4 or 5 years, Zion's playing that left guard. Yeah. But now you have an opportunity to see what, cream rises to the top. But if you're at number 1 or number 2 or number 3, what kind of opportunities you have to be a starting offensive lineman in the National Football League and play for possibly the AFC, is going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. You know how hard I work my ass off those next 4 or 5, these next 5, 6 weeks. And then June, when you're off, or you take that month off and before camp, I'm even working harder saying, no, I'm going to be stronger. I'm coming. These guys, if you're at that guard position, every position, of course, but when you know that, hey, I got an opportunity to be a 1, I love it. So I think you're going to get great competition. And the guys that you drafted and the guys that you brought in, they're all hungry to play that position. They're all fighting for a starting position. Penny's always been a tough guy. This guy wants to show, So it's great sometimes when you have a position that's open for battle because you get to see who's really going to show up and show out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what does Coach say? Competitors welcome. And there's nothing wrong with a little competition. It was a fun day, though. It's fun to be out there. With Herbert not throwing, it was just that it started out a little rough. I was like, oh, man, I'm out here and I'm watching, nothing against Trey Lance and DJ. I love watching them throw, but, it's my first chance to it's another chance to we only get 1 day a week until mandatory mini camp. Then we'll have every day, 16, 17, 18, I think is mandatory mini camp. So we'll get that every day. But, it was kind of a little bit of a bummer out there and ended up just kind of rapping with a bunch of people as opposed to paying too close attention to what was going on. Just trying to get some insights as to how things were going, and then ended up really strong with the pressers. I thought the pressers were great. And I, again, would encourage everybody. It's about 25 minutes combined for Alt and Slater, and it's about 20 minutes exactly of Herbert. So I would recommend hitting up Chargers.com. Check those out. Again, with the Rams bumping up a little bit at plus 550. Everybody else kind of kicked down. Their odds got a little bit longer. I would probably check FanDuel to see if you can put a little something on an all LA Super Bowl. Let's see if we can have some fun with that.
Let's do it.
Maybe put a little future action on that. But what do we got? Plus 750 for AFC, minus 164 to make the playoffs. So they expect them to be a playoff team. To finish, to win the division. Let's see, third in the division, plus 250. Second in the division, plus 210. Is kind of what they got going. And then they have wins. 14 plus is plus 900. That's a pretty high number. 10 plus is minus 125. So looks pretty good. Looks pretty – to win the division, they are plus 185. So there's some odds on the way out. Be sure to check out the PMLoungeFresno.com, right?
There we go.
I just got a text while we were doing this from my friend Matt, who is a Navy veteran, and he is able to get me on the Navy course here in town. Oh. And he's like, hey, and he has not asked me to play golf in at least a year. And I just got the text, you want to play Saturday at 8:06 at Navy? And I'm like,
there you go. You're getting ready for the big turn.
It's a sign. It's a sign that I need to get competitive. We get competitors welcome, man. All right. I know it's a scramble, and I know we're already like 6 drinks in by the time we tee off, but I don't care. I'm going out to compete. I'm going out to compete.
Don't worry. You and me and Jim and Jeffrey and Barton, we're gonna have some shots, buddy. We're gonna get you going.
There we go.
And then you're deep, and then you're freaking MCing too. That's gonna be incredible, money. I'm excited.
Right, man. It's going to be a great time. So be sure to check that out. Sign up, come out, hang with us, talk Charger football, be around some of the all-time greats, and enjoy the weekend. We're looking forward to it. It's only, 3 weeks from Friday, right? 3 weeks from Friday, we're going to be rolling up in Fresno in a 5.59. Very excited about it. All right, Lo.
Well, bolt up, everybody. Bolt up.
Right, bolt up.